Hello and welcome to my channel, Amoeba Savant. My name is Nalinne Jones and I am reading the Brothers Karamazov. This is chapter 7. Please subscribe. A Career Conscious Divinity Student. Alyosha helped his elder to the bedroom and sat him down on the bed. It was a tiny room containing only the most indispensable furniture. The very narrow iron bed had a strip of felt for a mattress. In a corner by the icons there was a lectern with a cross and a Bible lying on it. The elder lowered himself onto the bed, completely exhausted. His eyes shone and he breathed with great difficulty. Once seated, he looked at Alyosha very intently, as if deliberating about something. "Go on, my boy. Be off. Porphyry will take care of me," he said. "They need you over there, so go to the Father Superiors and help them out during lunch." "Allow me to stay here," Alyosha murmured beseechingly. "They need you more than I do. There's no peace there, so you help them out. Be really useful to them. And if the devil stirs them up again, say a prayer. And you know, son," the elder liked to call him that, "the monastery is really no place for you. Remember that, my boy. When God decides the time has come for me to die, you must leave the monastery. Leave it for good." Alyosha gasped. "What's the matter? No, this isn't the What's the matter? No, this isn't the place for you, at least not yet. I am sending you out into the world with my blessings, and you will be of great service there. There's still a long, long road ahead of you. And you'll take a wife, too. Yes, you will. You'll have to go through many, many things before you return, and there is a great deal for you to do. But I have no doubts about you. That is why I am sending you. Christ is with you. Do not abandon him, and he will not abandon you. You will know great sorrow, and in that sorrow you will find happiness. This is my last message to you. Seek happiness through sorrow. Work and work without rest, and from now on remember my words, for, although we shall talk again, not only my days, but my hours are numbered." Alyosha's face again showed great emotion. The corners of his lips quivered. "There you go again," the elder said, smiling gently. "Let the worldly shed tears for their dead. We here are happy for a father who is departing. We rejoice with him and pray for him. So go now. It is time for me to pray. And hurry, stay close to your brothers. Not just one of them, but both." I got a little teary-eyed in that. The elder raised his hand to bless him. Alyosha could not protest, although he longed to stay. He also wanted to ask the elder, the question almost slipped off his tongue, what he had meant by bowing to the ground before Dmitri, but he didn't care. He knew that Father Zosima would, if it had been possible, have explained it to him without being asked. But apparently the elder did not think it was. That bow, however, had made a staggering impression upon Alyosha, who was absolutely convinced that it had some mysterious meaning. Mysterious, and perhaps also frightening. My cat wants out. One sec. She sleeps on the bed all day long, and then the minute that I close the door, so that there's no sound, she wants out. So, where was I? As Alyosha left the Hermitage, hurrying to get to the monastery where he was, of course, simply to wait on table in time for lunch, his heart suddenly contracted painfully, and he stopped dead. The elder's words, announcing his own impending end, came back to him. Whatever the elder predicted, especially with such precision, was bound to happen. Alyosha believed that implicitly. But what would Alyosha do without him? How could he live without ever seeing him again, without hearing him? And where would he go? The elder had ordered him not to weep and to leave the monastery. Oh Lord, it was long since Alyosha had felt so miserable. He started walking again, crossing the little wood between the Hermitage and the monastery very quickly. Hold on a second. Hey Google, how do you pronounce Hermitage?
On the website youglish.com, they say
Hermitage. Hermitage? Hermitage. Doesn't sound right. He started walking again, crossing the little wood between the hermitage and the monastery very quickly, unable to bear his own thoughts, so much did they oppress him. He started to look at the ancient pines on either side of the path. He didn't have far to go, 500 yards or so, and at this hour of the day it was unlikely that he would meet anyone. Yet, as he rounded the first bend in the path, his eyes suddenly fell on Radican, who seemed to be waiting for someone. "Are you waiting for me, by any chance?" Alyosha asked him as he came up to him. "Yes, precisely for you," Rakitin said with a grin. "You're hurrying over to the Father Superior's." "I know, that meal. He hasn't given a meal like this since he had the bishop and General Pakhatov at his table. I won't be there, but you'd better go and pass around the sauces. But first, tell me, Alyosha, what did that gesture mean? That's what I wanted to ask you." "What gesture?" "I mean that bow before your brother Dmitri. He even banged his forehead on the floor." "Are you speaking of Father Zosima?" "That's right, Father Zosima." "He banged his forehead? What's the matter? Didn't I express myself respectfully enough?" "Well, never mind, respectfully or not, what does it mean?" "I don't know what it means, Misha." "Just as I thought, he didn't explain it to you. Well, there's really nothing so very complicated about it, just his usual holy mumbo-jumbo. But it was a well-planned trick. And now all those sanctimonious people will be going around the town and the province asking one another what that gesture could possibly have meant. Well, I believe the old man has a pretty keen nose. He's caught the sense of crime. Your house stinks of crime, Alyosha." "What crime? What are you talking about?" Rakitin was obviously anxious to talk. "The crime in your nice little family between your dear brothers and your rich papa. So Father Zosima decided to bang his forehead on the floor just in case, and later, if anything does happen, people will say, 'Ah, that saintly elder prophesied it.' Although, come to think of it, what kind of prophesying is it, to bang one's head on the floor? No, they will say it was symbolic, allegorical, or heaven knows what. They'll sing his praises and remember it forever. He anticipated the crime and pointed out the perpetrator of it. That's the way it always is with God's fools. They're liable to cross themselves at the sight of a tavern and then hurl stones at a church. And that's how your elder is too. He'll drive a righteous man out with a stick and then prostrate himself before a murderer." "What crime? What murderer? What's the matter with you?" Alyosha stopped dead. Rakitin also stopped. "What murderer? As though you didn't know that yourself. I'd bet anything that it's occurred to you before this. I'm curious, though, Alyosha. I know you always tell the truth, even though you never like to say what you think. So tell me then, has it ever occurred to you before or not? Answer me." "It has," Alyosha said, and even Rakitin was taken aback. "Do you mean it? Is it possible that even you have thought of it, Alyosha?" he exclaimed. "Well, I didn't actually think of it," Alyosha murmured. "But just now, when you said it so strangely, it seemed to me that it had occurred to me too. So then, and I like the way you put it, you see perfectly well what I mean. Today, when you looked at your papa and at your big brother Mitya, the idea of a crime occurred to you, didn't it? I wasn't just imagining things, was I?" Wait, Alyosha interrupted him anxiously. "What makes you see it that way? And why does it preoccupy you so much?" "You've asked me two separate questions, but natural ones. I'll answer them one at a time. Why do I see it that way? Well, I wouldn't have seen anything at all if today I hadn't suddenly understood your brother Dmitri completely. I can see right through him now. I understood the whole man through one particular trait in his character. There is a certain line that no one is allowed to cross in dealing with a man like that, who is scrupulously honest, but sensuous and passionate. Otherwise, a man like him could easily slash his dear papa's throat, especially when his dear papa is a drunken and unscrupulous lecher who never knows just how far he can go. They'll neither of them be able to control themselves, and the next thing you know, they'll both land in the ditch." "No, Misha, if that's all there is to it, I feel rather reassured. It'll never reach that point. Then why are you shaking? You know what? Even if your brother Mitya is an honest man, which he is, stupid and honest, he is also sensuous and passionate. That's the definition of his character, his very essence. He inherited his animal sensuality from his father. As a matter of fact, what puzzles me no end is how you, Alyosha, have managed to remain virgin to this day. You, a Karamazov. Why, sensuality runs through your family like a feverish obsession. Here, these three sensualists are stalking one another now, each one of them with a knife hidden in the leg of his boot. The three of them have met head-on, and you may be the fourth. You mean about that woman? You're wrong. Dmitri despises her. Alyosha said, his whole body shuddering strangely. Despise Grushenka? No, my friend. Dmitri doesn't despise her. How can he, when he obviously prefers her to the woman he's promised to marry? This is something you can't understand yet, my friend. A man, you know, may fall in love with physical beauty, with a woman's body, maybe even with just a bit of that body. Any sensualist can understand that. And then, for her sake, he'll willingly give up his children, betray his father and mother and his native country. He may be honest, but he'll steal. He may be gentle, but he'll kill. He may be faithful, but he'll deceive. Pushkin was a bard of women's legs. He celebrated women's legs in his poems. Others do not devote poems to them, but they can't look at them without inner commotion. But in this case, it's not just the legs. In this case, scorn wouldn't help. Even if Dmitri did despise Grushenka, he still couldn't tear himself away from her. I understand that very well, Alyosha blurted out quite unexpectedly. Really? Well, maybe you do understand it at that, the way you blurted that out, Rakitin said, with malicious enjoyment. You didn't mean to say that, it just slipped out. And that makes the admission so much more valuable. It goes to show the subject is already familiar to you, that you've given it some thought, sensuality, that is. Oh, you virgin boy, you're a quiet one, Alyosha. A regular little saint, it's true, but a quiet one, and who knows all the things you know and think about. You're virgin, but what depths you've already explored. I've been observing you for a long time. You're a Karamazov, as much a Karamazov as the rest. Your breed and natural selection must count for something. You're a sensualist like your father, and one of God's fools like your mother. Why are you trembling? Isn't it true what I say? Shall I tell you that Grushenka asked me to do? What Grushenka asked me to do? Bring him here, she said, meaning you. I'll pull that cassock off his back. You should have heard her insist. Bring him here, bring him here. See that he comes. I really wonder why she should be so curious about you. She's no ordinary woman herself. Give her my regards and tell her that I won't come, Alyosha said with a twisted smile. And now finish what you wanted to tell me, Mikhail. Then I'll tell you what I think of it all. I've really nothing more to say. It all seems pretty clear now. The rest falls into place by itself. If even a boy like you is a sensualist underneath, that leaves very little doubt about Ivan, who was born of the same mother and is a Karamazov too. That's your family's problem. You are all sensualists, money grabbers, and God's fools. For the time being, Ivan writes theological articles, although he is an atheist and admits that he does not seriously mean what he says in them. And he does it all for some strange, idiotic reasons. On top of that, Ivan is trying to take his brother Mitya's fiancée away from him, and he seems to be succeeding. As a matter of fact, he's doing it with Dmitri's consent, since Dmitri is only too eager to disentangle himself from her so that he can rush off to Grushenka. And through it all, Dmitri remains highly honorable and disinterested. I want you to note that, because men like him are the most dangerous of all. Who the hell can explain you Karamazovs? How can a man realize that he has acted despicably, admit it, and then continue acting in the same way? And now listen to this. There's someone still in Mitya's way, the old man, his own father. He's crazy about Grushenka too. He positively drools when he looks at her. It was because of her that he made that disgraceful scene in the elder's cell, just because Miusov referred to her as a creature or something. He's like an amorous tomcat now. At first she was only a paid employee in some of his shady dealings over his chain of taverns. Then one day, when he took a good look at her, he suddenly became frantic and started pestering her with all sorts of prepositions, none of them honorable, as you can well imagine. Well, they'll clash head-on, father and son, this way. For the moment, Grushenka doesn't allow either of them to come too close. She's teasing them both and studying the situation to see which one will be more profitable. She could, of course, get quite a lot of money out of your father, but then he wouldn't marry her, and eventually he's likely to turn tight-fisted and hide his purse away. And that's where Dmitri has his value. He has no money, but he at least is quite capable of marrying her. Yes, sir, he'd marry her all right. He'd leave his Katerina, a girl of great beauty, a lady, a colonel's daughter, for the sake of that Grushenka, the former mistress of the merchant Samsonov, that debauched peasant who is our mayor. So there's enough there for a clash of passions and crime. And that's just what your brother Ivan is waiting for. It would suit him in every respect. He'd get Katerina, for whom he's pining, and along with her a dowry of 60,000 rubles. Not a bad start for a fellow like him without money or position. And I want you to note that he wouldn't be hurting Mitya. Indeed, Mitya would be indebted to him for as long as he lived. I know for a fact that, only a week ago, in a tavern with some gypsy girls, Mitya was drunk and was holding forth about how he wasn't good enough for his fiancée Katerina, whereas his brother Ivan was indeed worthy of her. As to Katerina herself, it's not very likely that she would turn down a charmer like Ivan in the end, since even today she seems to be hesitating between the two of them. Speaking of Ivan, I really can't understand how he's won you all over. Cat scared the crap out of me. I'll be right back. I really can't understand how he's won you all over so that you all admire him so much while he sits there comfortably having a good laugh at your expense. What makes you think that you know so much about these things? How can you be so sure of what you say? Alyosha suddenly asked, frowning. Tell me why, having asked that, you're afraid beforehand of my answer. Doesn't that mean that you admit the truth of what I've said? You just don't like Ivan. Ivan wouldn't do anything like that for money. Wouldn't he? And what about the beautiful Katerina? It's not just for money, although I must say 60,000 rubles is something to think about. Ivan is aiming at higher things. I wouldn't be tempted even by thousands of rubles. He's not looking for money or for security. What he's looking for is perhaps it's suffering and torment that he's after. What's this? Another wild dream. And you gentlemen. No, Misha. He is a soul in turmoil. His mind is entirely preoccupied with one thing, a great unresolved idea. He's one who has no use for millions. All he wants is to find an answer to the problem. Now you're guilty of literary plagiarism, Alyosha, my boy. You're just paraphrasing your elder. He has certainly befuddled you all, that brother of yours. Rakitin cried maliciously, his mouth twisting so that his whole face changed. Besides, the riddle he offers is just plain stupid. In fact, it's not worth deciphering. His article is ridiculous, absurd, and I also heard his idiotio theory that if there is no immortality of the soul, there can be no virtue, and therefore everything is permissible. By the way, do you remember how your big brother Mitya cried out, "I'll remember that"? Of course, it's a very attractive theory for villains. It is stupid of me to use such strong words. I should have said not villains, but rather schoolboys showing off, pretending they're oppressed by profound and insoluble problems. He's just a miserable little braggart, and all he says just amounts to, on the one hand, we cannot but admit mankind can find enough strength within itself. On the one hand, we cannot but admit, and on the other, we must confess. His whole theory is vile. Mankind can find enough strength within itself to live for virtue's sake, even without believing in the immortality of the soul. In the love of freedom, of equality, and the brotherhood of man, it will find it. Rakitin had so worked himself up that he could hardly control himself. Then suddenly he seemed to remember something and stopped. "Well, I've talked enough," he said, his smile more twisted than ever. "Why are you laughing? You think I'm a vulgar bore." "No, I've never thought you were a bore. You're an intelligent person, but don't pay attention to me. I really don't know why I felt like laughing. I understand why you got a bit carried away, Misha. From your heated tone, I guess you're not quite indifferent to Katerina yourself. I've suspected as much for a long time, you know. That's why you dislike Ivan. You're jealous of him, aren't you?" "And I suppose I'm also jealous because of her money, no? Go on, why don't you say that, too?" "No, I've nothing to say about the money. I have no wish to offend you, Misha." "I believe it, since you say so, but again, as far as your brother Ivan is concerned, you can go to hell. None of you understand that one might thoroughly dislike him, quite apart from being jealous of Katerina. And why should I like him, damn it all? I like him, damn it all? Since he does me the honor of abusing me, why shouldn't I abuse him? I've never heard him saying anything either good or bad about you. He's never mentioned you at all as far as I know." "Well, I was told that 2 days ago he was belaboring me for all he was worth at Katerina's. Doesn't that prove that he's very much interested in yours truly?" "Can you be so sure who's jealous of whom? He was pleased to predict on that occasion that if I decided in the near future that the career of an archimandrite was not for me, and that I would not be tonsured, I would be sure to go off to Petersburg, that I would get myself onto the staff of some thick magazine in the literary section, of course. He said I'd write for it about 10 years, by which time I'd have managed to get the whole magazine under my own name. Then, according to him, I'd be sure to make it toe a liberal, atheistic line with socialist overtones, a slight varnish of socialism, that is, but very carefully handled, keeping an ear to the ground. That is, pleasing everyone and hoodwinking the fools. The crowning glory of my career, according to your dear brother, would come when, despite my socialist varnish, I had accumulated a solid bank account from the subscriptions to the magazine, which I would swell by investing at every good opportunity through the intermediary of some Jew, until I had enough to buy myself a large apartment building in Petersburg. Then I would transfer my editorial offices there and rent the rest of the apartments. He even decided on a location for the house, near the new stone bridge that is to be built across the Neva between Litania and Vyborg streets. Ah, Misha, you know that's how it will really happen, word for word," Alyosha cried out, unable to suppress a cheerful grin. "Now you're being sarcastic too, Mr. Alexei Karamazov." No, I was joking. Don't be angry with me. I have something altogether different in my mind. But tell me, who could possibly have repeated what he said to you in such detail? Surely you can't have been at Katerina's when he said all that about you. I wasn't there, of course, but your brother Dmitri was, and I heard it from him with my own ears. As a matter of fact, though, he did not tell me. I overheard him, accidentally. It goes without saying, because I was sitting in Grushenka's bedroom, and I couldn't get out of there as long as Dmitri was in the next room. That's right, I had completely forgotten. She's a relative of yours. Grushenka, a relative of mine, Rakitin shouted loudly, turning red. You're out of your mind. Your brains must be turning soft. Why, isn't she related to you? I heard she was. Where could you possibly have heard that? Oh, you Karamazovs, you give yourselves airs as though you came from an ancient line of distinguished gentry, whereas in fact your father used to act the clown, scrounging meals in other people's houses, depending on their charity. And even if I am only the son of a lowly priest and a mere louse compared with your members of the landed gentry, you shouldn't keep insulting me so light-heartedly and with such zest. For I also have a sense of dignity, Alexei Karamazov, and I'd like you to get it through your head that I could not possibly be related to a prostitute like Grushenka. Rakitin was in a state of great agitation. Please forgive me, I'm terribly sorry it never occurred to me. Besides, why is she a prostitute? Is she really? Alyosha suddenly turned a beet red. I repeat, I heard someone say she was related to you. You do often go to see her, and you told me yourself that you'd never been her lover. I had no idea that you felt such profound scorn for her. Do you really think she deserves it? I might have special reasons for visiting her, and that should be good enough for you. As for being related to her, you have a much better chance than I have of winding up as a relative of hers, courtesy of your brother, or perhaps even your father. Well, here we are. You'd better hurry into the kitchen. But what's going on? Are we late? Why, they can't possibly have finished eating their lunch so quickly. Perhaps the Karamazovs have been up to something again. It looks like it. There's your father over there. And look, Ivan is following him. They've left the Father Superiors. Look, Father Isidore is shouting something to them from the doorstep. And your father is shouting too and waving his hands in the air. I'm sure he must be swearing. And there's Musov driving off in the carriage. And now I see Maximov, the landowner, running. There must have been a real explosion. The luncheon can't have been taken place. They can't have beaten up the Father Superior, or perhaps they got beaten. I wish I could have seen it. Rakitin had good reason for shrieking with excitement. Something scandalous, unheard of, and completely unexpected had just taken place, and it had all happened as the result of an inspired idea. And that was chapter 7. I think that was book 2, if I remember correctly. Yes, I think that was book 2. I can't find it right now. But anyway, please subscribe. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy these readings. Let me know what you think of the story. Let me know if you have any guesses as to what just happened at the luncheon. Let me know if there are any mispronunciations you think I should fix. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.